Okay, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. It is April 6th. It's 9:30, our starting time. And if you're able, Commissioner Truex is going to help us with the invocation, and we'll stand for the pledge. So if you're able, please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather today and do organized business and fellowship as we try to improve the community in this area, Southwest Florida. We ask that you bless everyone that's in the presence today and all those attached to them around the world. We ask that you put special thoughts in our hearts and our heads for those suffering with injuries and illnesses, and also those suffering in the Ukraine. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the service of our military and our first responders. In your name we pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that was great. Thank you, Commissioner. A little bookkeeping. Number one, Commissioner Langford is on his way. The only thing I have no idea, but I presume since there's no traffic in Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte County, there's a lot of traffic in DeSoto. So we're going to leave it at that. We are going to have our county remarks welcoming us here today by an old friend, Kevin Morris of Manatee County Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Dr. Hopes, our Board of County Commissioners, and all the great citizens in Manatee County, it's a pleasure to extend a warm welcome to the Water Supply Authority to our home. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world today, both at home and abroad. There are many divisive forces at play that are working to highlight our differences and pull us apart. That's what makes the Water Supply Authority so unique. It serves 4 counties with a focus on what's in the best interest of all of them, but still respecting each having their own right to choose their own path. Collaboration and respect are the cornerstones of all great relationships, and the legendary basketball coach John Wooden taught us that great teams are always worth more than the sum of the individual players. We are stronger and more resilient together than we are separately. We're going to hear this morning about the impressive rate of growth we're seeing all across the region, and growth cannot happen without water supply. This region is very fortunate to have the Water Supply Authority to help pool resources and deliver visionary water supply projects that would not otherwise be possible. It's noteworthy for me to extend this welcome this morning because I spent 22 years at Peace River. In my tenure, we accomplished a lot of firsts. Each big project was humbling because it tested us in new ways and taught us where our weaknesses lie. But Mike has assembled a great team, and we know that they will be more than capable to the tasks ahead. In fact, judging from all the work you have planned in the coming years, it looks like I got out just in time. Again, we welcome you to Manatee County. We hope you enjoy your stay, and we wish you safe travels on your return home. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kevin, and it's great seeing you again. Thank you for that. Next is public comments, open to the public. I have no speaker cards. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in the public comment section? Okay, we'll need you to fill out a card, and there's a timer, and right in front of you on the back wall, and you get 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, I'm Bruno Kapusinskis. I'm with the Southwest Water Management District. I'm the new Government Affairs Regional Manager. I just started a week ago, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to say hello. I'm originally here in Manatee County, and I look forward to working with all of you in the Water Authority in the upcoming months and years. Thank you.
Well, a great welcome to you, and I think that Peace River would like all your phone numbers, especially the super secret ones that you never give out. How's that?
More than happy to provide that. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Okay, for item, I have no other speakers, so with item number 1, we're going to turn it over to Doug Manson.
I'm sorry.
We're on item number 1.
Oh, you're gonna go back- okay, we're gonna start up. Awesome.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We are, with Elton's arrival, we are back on the regular schedule.
So we're opening up the floor for nominations for chair and vice chair for, this will be from after this meeting to the November meeting. And then in post-November, November, we'll have another set of elections at the end of the board meeting. So, and this one role is the only time the general counsel gets to lead your meeting. So I'll go forward and open the floor right now for nominations for chairman. And you can either nominate chair and vice chair or each one independently.
I'd like to nominate the current chair to retain chair. He's terming out in Sarasota, and with 3 meetings left and the final meeting being in Sarasota, I think it's appropriate to, ask the current chair to retain that position at this stage.
Any other nominations for chair? Hearing. Okay, all right. All right, so if we could go ahead and vote for a commissioner. Right now, the only nomination is for the chair to be Commissioner Al Mayo. So all those in favor of Al Mayo as chair through November, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations.
So thank you
Now
all very much.
I'll open the floor for a nomination for vice chair.
I think we should retain Mr. Langford, Commissioner Langford, in that position, and I think we're doing just fine that way.
All right, are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, then we'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of Commissioner Langford as vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
There you go.
Back to-
Don't want to.
There you go. Perfect.
Chairman, you now have the gavel.
Yes. Okay, we are under the consent agenda now, items 1 through 7. Does any board member wish to pull any of the consent items? Okay, hearing none, we'll ask for a motion and a second on that.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the consent agenda.
A second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Truex, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Any discussion? Sure.
I had a comment, didn't need to pull this, but the property insurance renewal, I got educated on the needs of obviously the Water Supply Authority and the limited number of providers for our needs, because it was something that I always get concerned about if we only have one bidder, and then I had to learn a little bit more. But they've done well for us, and they're one of the few that will insure our transmission lines and such. So, I think it's the right thing to do, but I did want to just dig into that a little bit and then share that information.
And, we speed through the consent agenda here in our home counties, but it's great that you pulled that, because that is a necessary explanation, so people don't see these changes and wonder why we didn't drill down deeper, because our staff certainly did. Okay, well, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair votes aye, and that makes it 4-0 with a yes on the consent agenda. Now we're under the regular agenda and water supply conditions. Who is going to help us with that, Mike? Okay, there you are, Richard. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair. And congratulations on the close vote.
It was a hard-fought campaign, yes, thank you.
Good morning again, Commissioners. This is the water supply conditions update. We're going to cover the water supply conditions down at the plant for the month of March, and then look at the demands in the system for the month of February. If I can get the mouse to work here.
Press this first circle button right here twice.
Thank you, Terry. The mouse was not on. Pitfalls of going first, apparently.
It's all messed
So if you take a look at the rainfall, this is the rainfalls for the past 2 years. As you can see, going back to about December, we've been running below average on the rainfall, averaging less than 2 inches for December, January, and February. In March, we did pop up to about the average of almost 3 inches. And good news for April so far, we've had almost 2 inches more since the beginning of the month. First week of April, so about 1.9 inches in the basin for April as well. So seeing a little bit of rain, but not quite enough to help us with withdrawals at this point, as you'll see in a second. Here's the Peace River flow. Again, as you can see, going back to December, we've had just barely enough in the system to take some water. We've had somewhere between 20 and 15 MGD available to withdraw, but we did have to stop pumping on March 1st, so very little water available in the river right now. As you can see, the withdrawals. February, we averaged 14.2. We actually did have a little bit in March for the first week, about 8 MGD, but after that, we did have to stop withdrawals because of the river flow was below the 130 CFS mark. Obviously, that reflects in the system storage. This is the surface water storage for both reservoirs. As you can see, as of the 17th, we were at about 5.25 billion gallons in storage. Since that time, the last 2 weeks, we've actually dropped below the 5 billion gallon mark. We're down at about 4.8 billion as we stand here today. And because of that, we do have ASR storage. As you can see, we started out full, 8.7 billion in the system. We have activated the ASR system as of last week. We're withdrawing about 10 million gallons a day from the system to help augment the surface water supplies. And that's due in part to the lack of rain, but also, as you'll see in a few minutes, extremely high demands over the last couple of months in the regional system. And that translates into the total supply with ASR and the surface water of about 12 months of supply right now, 364 days actually of supply, using our current average day flow of about 28 MGD. Now if we'll switch over to the supply side, this is for the month of February. As you can see, the authority put out 30.4 MGD. And your facilities, city and county facilities, did 54, just a hair over 54 million gallons. Total delivered was almost 84.5 million gallons a day average. Now, 3.7 of that went to the consecutive customers of Manatee County, leaving about 80.7 being delivered to your facilities and customers. Looking at it county by county, as you can see, Charlotte County took 12.7 from the authority, produced 0.6 from Burnt Store for a total of 13.3 for the month. And the 12-month rolling average is 12.2 for Charlotte County, and that's the first time, as you can see, that the rolling average has gone over 12 MGD for the county. So demands are going up. For DeSoto County, as you can see, they took about 0.75 from the authority, and another 300,000 at the DeSoto Correctional Facility for a usage of just over 1 million gallons a day. For Manatee County, Manatee County self-supplied 39 MGD to their customers, delivered another 4.3 to Sarasota, again the 3.7 to the consecutives on the coast, and then the total produced at the facility was 47.2 million gallons a day, which is about 91% of their permitted capacity. And then Sarasota County, we have 13.5 from the authority, which is about 90% of their allocation. Imported another 4.6, and the county self-supplied about 5.5 MGD from their facilities at Carlton and Venice Gardens. Total used was just a hair under 23 million gallons a day for the month. And then finally, the city of Northport. Took about 3.5 MGD from the authority, produced about another 500,000 from their facility, and they took about 260,000 a day from Sarasota County as well. Total usage was 4.2 million gallons a day. And then looking at the regional demands here, as you can see, The 12-month rolling average still climbing. This is after 6 months of 2022. Looking back, it's up another half an MGD more or less to 79.4 MGD running average. And looking at the utilization here, we used 84.4 for the month, leaving 20.2 available, which is 80.1% or 80.5% rather of total available capacity. So leaving only 20 available for supply. I don't usually share the March numbers, but I would like to mention because as Kevin has mentioned, he was at the authority for a lot of firsts. We have another first. I don't know if he's still here, but oh, there he is. Hey, Kevin. First time ever, the authority produced over 1 billion gallons of water in 1 month. We produced 33.3 MGD delivered water out the door. So we've never produced that much water, and it's a milestone. So I want to mention that to you and thank our staff for all their hard work and everything they do to keep the water flowing every day. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Richard? No, Richard, thank you. And as always, when you do this, especially this $1 billion number, it's dramatic, and it's a credit to our staff and the staffs of the 4 counties for doing this, and City of Northport.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. I am remiss, because he was up here talking with me, and I forgot to announce that we have a current commissioner, but a former member of this board, Commissioner Dougherty, who's here in the audience. And any mistakes that have been made in the past that you think are mistakes, please go. He's in the back row. Please go right up to Commissioner Dougherty and tell him. All right, we're on item number 2, the legislative update, and Laura Donaldson is going to help us with that.
Good morning. I've got about 7 to 10 minutes for this, so I'm going to talk really, really quickly because there's a lot that was happening. Let me start my timer. So I'm Laura Donaldson. I am one of Doug Manson's partners. In addition to doing legal work for the authority, I also am a lobbyist for some of my legal clients, including Peace River. So the 2022 legislative session just ended in March. It actually did not end on time because surprisingly, there was so much money for the legislature to budget that it took them a really hard time to figure out how to spend the money. And there were a lot of things that went, but I wanted to point this out. So I'm not going to go through every bullet, but at the end of the day, you can see that there were 3,735 bills and PCBs filed. And I do believe, Mike, that everyone got a copy of this. So you should, this is kind of a summary of the bills. What's not included on that chart is I track probably 130 to 150 bills for the authority, in part because you don't know what could be amended, what could be a train, and so this is just a very quick snapshot. So major issues, these were the major issues that were covered this session that were like the controversial issues. I will be talking about solar energy because there is a provision that could impact the authority. I threw this statistic in because I found it very interesting that everyone thinks it's very controversial in Tallahassee, but in fact, there is bipartisan support except for 7 bills. And I think we lose that when you read the newspaper or the blogs. For me, this is just always interesting when I talk to people about politics in Tallahassee. Okay, so the budget, largest budget ever, $112.1 billion. We have $50 million for alternative water supply projects. So this was an increase. The governor asked for 40. 40's always been that number for alternative water supply. This is funding that the water management districts will submit projects to DEP, and DEP will decide who gets this portion of the money. In addition, Resilient Florida grant program, $200 million. This is a big deal. The authority got funding from this past budget, from last year's money, or I guess this fiscal year's money, because we start July 1. I've been telling every place I talk that if you have a project, if you can try to make it about resiliency, get that project, because that's where the money's going in Tallahassee, is this program. As you can see, a large amount of money was included for water projects. One of the things that we were working on, or it's on our chart, was a potable reuse communications plan $500,000. Unfortunately, that did not get funded. This was going to be the second year of funding. Okay, authorities appropriation request. So I have good news, not good news. The not good news was that the pipeline, Phase 3 pipeline, did not get funded by the legislature. We were asking for $3 million. That was not included. But we did get $2 million related to the wetland project, the wetland mitigation associated with the reservoir. So that was good news. We asked for $2 million. We got $2 million. Senator Gruters filed that request in the Senate. That is because Senator Albritton, who is our main senator that I've dealt with in the past, because of his position as the Appropriations Environmental Subcommittee Chair, as well as he's going to be Senate President in 2 years, decided not to file any appropriations. So based on that, for the next couple of years, we'll be dealing with Senator Boyd and Senator Gruters in filing our requests. Okay, legislation really quickly. PFAS is a big issue. We're going to have a task force. Did not happen. What DEP has been doing is sending these letters to local governments that are having PFAS issues and basically saying, you have to clean it up. It's a little difficult considering there are not standards in place. And so the legislature passed a law that basically says, DEP, you have to adopt these standards if EPA doesn't do it. So we're not getting ahead of EPA. In addition, it tells DEP you can't enforce any cleanup levels until they're adopted. Because it really is, for a local government who has to clean something up, if that level changes, maybe you did too much, maybe you didn't do enough, it's not very efficient. This has not been sent to the governor yet. The controversial environmental bill, Senate Bill 2508, 4 environmental groups have come out so far to veto it. What's not on this slide, there's a portion dealing with South Florida Water Management District and Lake O, so it's very controversial. But I included it in part because everyone knows about the Senate bill, Section 404 delegation. We talked about this when I gave my last legislative report. It has not gone well. Anyone who's doing development knows it's substantially delayed getting your permits. So this bill allows DEP to enter into an agreement with a local government to do permitting effectively. I put this on because I think this is something that the authority could consider moving forward with the reservoir project because we will need 404. It's interesting, DEP, if this bill does not get vetoed, we would be paying DEP to have the authority to do these 404 permit reviews. And it's just for local government. So it's a neat little item tucked into this much more controversial bill. This is a lot on the slide. I apologize. So this is basically the resiliency bill. So right now, the chief resilience officer is in DEP. Under this bill, they're being moved to the governor's office. So the governor will have much more control of that position and gives a lot more authority to the chief resilient officer for the state of Florida. And basically requires local governments to help them as long as it doesn't cost you financially. In addition, the legislation provided specific requirements related to, this is a lot. I'm going to only cover 2 slides. The DEP has to do a statewide flooding and sea level rise resiliency plan every year. And that plan will be used to fund projects, and that was something that the authority got money. So this year, it passed last year, this was a glitch bill. One of the things that we found out, that the authority found out, was that the way it was written, special districts would have to go through a county or a city or a water management district to get our funding for resiliency projects. We were able to successfully get regional water supply authorities and special districts that do potable supply into this legislation. This should be signed. It has not been sent to the governor. So rather than having to have our project as part of a county project, we can apply directly to DEP. So this is helpful because what we found, not with the authority, but overall the state counties were reluctant to include other governments' projects within their plan because now you're competing with other projects, and that was not the intent. So this bill kind of fixed that. In addition, it requires $100 million be funded every year for resiliency projects. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a project, we got to go. I know that Mike and I have talked about this quite a bit. Let's tie everything to why we need to do it for resiliency. Okay, almost getting done. Inventories of critical wetlands. Interesting, water management districts have to now identify critical wetlands within the district. And as a property owner, we would be notified. There is a lot of controversy about why. I think this is happening because it will help property owners who have wetlands get more money when they sell their properties to the state or the water management district. Because I had a legislator tell me that property with wetlands are much more valuable than property that's developable. I brought this up because I do know that the authority's doing a lot with wetlands with the reservoir project, so it's just something we need to keep in track of. Okay, House Bill 965, and none of these bills have been sent to the governor yet. This one creates like a mitigation bank for water quality. It will only be used for local government projects. This law, if it is signed, will be expanded in the future for development. I know the organization that was pushing it. So basically think about someone can impair a water body, but if they pay to mitigate it somewhere else, they're going to be allowed to do this. So this is something that I'm bringing to the authorities' attention because we'll have to watch to make sure that there are not unintended consequences to the Peace River. I threw this one in. FWC is going to be required to help expand gopher tortoise recipient sites. Because that's an issue, and I know the authorities had to deal with gopher tortoises in the past. And it's effectively, there's a claim that there's not enough sites, and so we need to expand that. So now this will allow state lands to be used for this. Net metering, I know that the authority has been looking at doing solar. This has been something that's been discussed over the years. This net metering, the intent was the utilities claim that consumers that are not doing solar are subsidizing people who are doing solar. And so utilities want to get the full cost recovery. And it was a very quick timeline. And so we were successfully able to push the dates back. So if the authority can enter into an agreement with FP&L, if the authority decides to do solar, we can keep the existing recovery rates now. So there is an incentive to do solar sooner rather than later under this legislation if it's signed, because if not, it starts going like 75, 65, where it will take much longer to recover the cost of your solar facility. This one, just real quickly, the only thing I'll say, floating solar, I know when we had, luckily during session, the executive director, Terry and Richard all came to Tallahassee, and it was a great, we had a lot of meetings. We are now authorized to put a floating solar facility, if this bill becomes law, on the Peace River reservoirs. Apparently, it was something we couldn't do before. And then this should be the last two slides, executive appointments. There's been an ongoing fight since last fall about how the governor can appoint the DEP secretary and as well as some other positions and whether or not he needed cabinet approval. The legislature has now given the governor two processes. One is he can go straight to the legislature and have the Senate confirm his appointments. So this will be like the FDLE secretary who just announced he was resigning. This has become law. He signed this I think 2 weeks ago. So this basically, if the governor doesn't like his cabinet members, he can go to the Senate, or he can go straight to the cabinet, and it lays out that process. So this helps avoid controversy related to someone being appointed. Really quickly, the DEP secretary, Sean Hamilton, was confirmed, and the 3 board members for SwiftMud were selected, and that's one of the priorities for the authority. I was really quick. There's a lot more that happened in Tallahassee, but I just tried to hit the highlights on some bills that directly impacted the authority.
Does anyone have any questions for Laura? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was great. Okay, we're on item number 3, the 20-year demand projections, and our Terry Holcomb is going to help us with that.
Mr. Commissioner, members of the board, Terry Holcomb with authority staff, good morning. This morning's regular item 3, our 20-year demand projections, is for informational purposes only. We have a lot on our agenda today, so I'm going to make this a pretty quick presentation. At the end, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them. So the agenda, like I said, pretty brief. We're going to cover the new water supply demand procedures, just kind of go over the review of that process. Included in that process is our current demand projections that our customers have provided to us for the next 20 years. And included in those projections are their supply development projects that they've identified to meet their supplies. And then finally, we'll just end up with a real quick next steps in this process. So real quick overview, the new water supply demand process is found in Section 11 of the Master Water Supply Contract. And there's really 3 key procedures or progressions that happen through the new water supply development process. Section 11 identifies the requirement for the authority's customers to provide their 20-year demand projections to us. And included in those demand projections are a 7-year rolling window. If requests of the authority's water or new allocations occur within that 7-year rolling window, then that kind of triggers the next progression, and that's the need to amend Exhibit C of the Master Water Supply Contract. What we do there is we look to see the quantities that are requested in that 7-year window. We go to the next progression and look at the water supply sources that have been identified to be available to meet those needs. And we work with the customers to complete those demand allocations and the other exhibits within the Master Water Supply Contract. So a little deeper dive in that process. There's 3 pieces of information that the customers provide: their 20-year demand projections, the portion of those demand projections that need to be met by the authority, and the basis of those demand projections. We look at the customer's basis of demand projections. We compare that to the authority's demand projections. We look at regional demands through our integrated regional water supply plan, and we make sure that we're all on the same path so that we can come to agreement on the requested demands. And then we'll work with the authority's customers and their professional staff to identify new supplies in that 7-year window. We need this 7-year window because the authority needs to have that lead time to be able to plan for and design and construct the new facilities. Included with the demand projections, we use it for other uses. So we've got planning future supplies and facilities. We need to identify, do we have enough infrastructure to get the new supplies to where the demands are occurring? Do we need transmission mains to do that? Storage facilities, pumping facilities. So that helps us identify where those occur in the region. We obviously use these as part of our budgeting process, and we'll cover that later in today's agenda. And to project facility capacities, not only do we need to meet the average day demands, but we also have to meet those peak demands that occur on daily and monthly bases. And then we have to identify the available redistribution pool water. So all of those things occur in that new water supply demand procedure outlined in Section 11 of the Master Water Supply Contract. So let's just take a real quick look at the current demand projections and the supplies that were identified by our customers as well as the authority to meet those demands. You can see here the current regional supply of all the facilities is approximately 103 million gallons per day. And when I say the regional capacity, that includes all of the customers' facilities and their capacities as well as the authorities. That's shown here in that red line. Down at the bottom graph, you can see just 103 million gallons per day. The 20-year customer projected demands that we received earlier this year show that there's 130 million gallons per day needed within the 20-year window out to 2042, and that actually tracks pretty closely to what the Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan projected back in 2020. So we'll have an additional 20-year demand of 27 million gallons per day for the region. So when we look at what those demand projections indicated were requests specifically from the authority. Currently, the authority has a contract allocation amount with our customers for 34.7 million gallons per day on an annual average basis. That's shown here in the red line. You can see that the customer demands shown here in the blue line will exceed the current allocation by 2028, and that the 20-year requested authority supply is 55.8 million gallons per day, and that leaves us with about 21 million gallons per day from the authority that we will need to develop within the next 20 years. I mentioned that the customers also provide their identified sources to meet their needs in addition to what the authority is being requested to provide. And you can see here, Manatee County identified 3 projects for a total of about 12.1 MGD for their facilities. Sarasota County identified the Carlton Water Treatment Plant expansion for 5.4 million gallons per day. And the city of Northport is going to utilize the Southwest Water Treatment Plant for up to 2 million gallons per day over the next 20 years as new sources. And you can see, again, many of those sources were identified as regional water supply sources in the 2020 Integrated Regional Water Supply Plan. That gives us a total of about 19.5 million gallons per day in additional customer-identified sources. So the authority sources that we've identified to meet our customers' demands, we have 2. That includes the Peace River Facility Surface Water Expansion Project, and that is actually a combination of 2 projects. It's the new 9 billion gallon PR3 project, the reservoir, coupled with the expansion of the water treatment plant. That's a 24 MGD planned expansion, and those 2 projects combined will yield an additional 18 million gallons per day for the region. The second water supply source project that we have within the 20-year window is a brackish water well field and RO facility that will be located at the Peace River facility, and that will provide up to an additional 5.5 million gallons per day to the region. And you can see we'll have a total of 23.5 million gallons per day available. So we talked a little bit about the new facilities. We need to identify if there are new facilities that need to go in conjunction with these new water supply projects. Real quick here, we have 4 transmission main projects that will also come up in our CIP discussion later. Those include the Phase 3C pipeline project from Clark Road to Blue Lake. That is to meet Sarasota County's needs by 2025. We've got the Phase 2B project from Cirrus Boulevard to Charlotte County's Gulf Cove facility. That will meet Charlotte County's needs by 2026. The Phase 3 extension project, which will meet Manatee County's needs by 2038. And the Phase 2C pipeline project from the Gulf Cove facility in Charlotte County up to the Carlton Water Treatment Plant to meet both Sarasota and Manatee County needs by 2038. And again, all 4 projects identified in the master plan. So just the next steps in the water supply development process. We talked about that 7-year rolling window. We do have new requested allocations that fall within that 7-year window by 2029. You can see here Charlotte County has a need for additional allocation in 2028. DeSoto County has a need in 2023, and Sarasota County in 2029. So the next process is we will sit down and work with the professional staffs. We will identify those appropriate allocation numbers, amend Exhibit C, as well as the other respective exhibits within the master water supply contract. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or take any input.
Okay, well done. Any questions for Terry? Okay, well, thank you, Terry. And this was just information only and no action is required.
Correct. Information only.
Well done, well done. Okay, we're on item number 4, the 5-year capital improvement plan and 20-year capital needs assessment. And that is also Terry.
I'd step away and come back.
Did you? Yeah, that's required.
All
You need
right.
to leave and come back. Okay, good. Thank you.
Again, Commissioners, regular item 4, the 5-year capital improvements plan and 20-year capital needs assessment presentation is for discussion purposes and informational. It's information only, no action is required. We will try and keep this one moving just as quickly as the last one. Again, the agenda will cover the purpose, development, and application of our CIP and CNA. We'll provide a brief overview, kind of by the numbers, for the 5-year CIP and 20-year CNA. And then we'll highlight some of those key projects within our 5-year CIP. They're germane to the later discussions in the agenda with the budget. And then just cover the next steps and schedule. So the purpose, development, and application. The purpose of a capital improvements plan, and pardon me for reading this, but the plan provides a working blueprint for sustaining and improving the authority's infrastructure. It coordinates our strategic planning, our financial capacity, and physical development of projects. It really stands at the center of our planning department, operations, engineering, and finance. And you'll see that as we move through this presentation. And I just put up our strategic plan there. You can see our vision and mission statement flanked by our 4 goals. The financial stability goal, the resiliency and planning goal, as well as the cooperation and collaboration. They are all intertwined when we develop these CIPs and CNI plans. Again, here just a graphic to identify the CIP sitting in the middle here. We touched on the strategic plan. The integrated regional water supply plan, we update that every 5 years. We project those 20 to 40-year regional growth demand needs, identify the sources that are within the region to meet those needs, and also identify the facilities that need to be brought on. So the integrated regional water supply plan is a key part in developing our CIP and CNA. We work with our operations department, the finance department, and our engineering department to ensure we've got adequate preliminary cost estimates to identify what those projects on a planning level will be. We get it into our finance planning, into our budgets, and we ensure that operations is on board to make sure we have adequate treatment technologies and capacities to meet those needs. And then we roll all that up with our customer collaboration. We need to make sure that these projects meet our customers' needs, not only from a capacity standpoint, but also from a timing standpoint. So a real quick overview of the 5-year CIP and 20-year CNA. By the numbers here, we've got 14 projects. Doesn't sound like a lot, but they're big projects in our next 20-year capital needs assessment. 8 of those projects are regional water transmission projects. 4 of those 8 are in the 5-year CIP. We have 4 water supply projects, 2 of which are in the 5-year CIP, and 2 system-wide benefit projects, both contained within the 5-year CIP. Now, the costs and the timing of the capital projects are coordinated not only with your professional staff, but also with the Water Management District to ensure that those are included in their regional water supply plan so that we can all receive the benefits of that 50% grant funding that's available for our water supply and transmission main projects. So real quickly, you can see here we've got the anticipated 5-year CIP. That's from 2023 to 2027 with a total of $556 million in the next 5 years. Chump change, right? You can see it broken down here by project type. We have, and I can't even read these with my glasses on, it's so small here. We have approximately $375 million or 67.5% in water supply development projects. $161 million or 29% in transmission main improvements, and $20 million or about 3.6% in common or system-wide benefit projects. Here you can see a graph of the benefits that we do anticipate receiving from the Water Management District or state and federal grants, with a total of $556 million in the 5-year CIP. We've got about 264 of that, hopefully, that will be cooperatively funded, leaving the authority with approximately $294 million over the next 5 years. Breaking down the 20-year CNA, and that is inclusive of the 5-year CIP, we have a total expenditure of about $886 million, with $495 million or 55.9% in water supply development projects, $371 million or 42% in transmission main projects, and those same 2 system-wide benefit projects for $20 million or about 2.2% of the budget. Again, the graphic showing the benefits of the cooperative funding process. $886 million over the next 20 years, grant funding hopefully in the amount of about $427 million, leaving the authority with an expenditure budget of about $462 million over 20 years. I just highlighted here that first 5 year. You can see it's a heavy lift. Then it kind of wanes down, and there'll be a little bit more of a spike in FY 23 through 33 through 37, and that takes into account that second water supply development source for Manatee County, that RO facility being brought on, and the associated pipelines. So real quick, just wanted to highlight some of the key 5-year CIP projects. The 2 water supply projects, we mentioned them. That includes the Peace River facility expansion at the water treatment plant for an additional 24 MGD, coupled with the new reservoir project, the PR3 project, to provide approximately 18 million gallons per day in annual average supply. The 4 transmission main projects, we've got the Phase 3 project, which is 10 miles of 42-inch diameter pipeline to meet Sarasota County's needs. The Phase 2B pipeline project, 13 miles, again, large diameter transmission main to meet Charlotte County's needs. The Phase 3C extension, approximately 11 miles to take the line up to connect the regional system to Manatee County. And then the Kings Highway Pipeline Replacement Project, which is a relocation project of about 2 miles of 24-inch transmission main. That's in conjunction with FDOT's widening of the interstate at Kings Highway. And then the 2 system-wide benefit projects, that includes the Water Resources Construction Department building. It's approximately 5,000 square feet for an administration / laboratory building to replace our existing 60-year-old, what we love to say, the ranch house, the original building on the property. We have approximately 10 staff working out of this facility, 2 of them working out of the garage that's separated from the home. The new building will get us all together. It'll provide a couple extra office spaces. We're anticipating a little bit of growth within the staff resources at the authority, as well as keep the lab, too, for our water quality and environmental specialists there. The second system-wide benefit project is the partially treated surface water ASR. That includes design, permitting, and construction of facilities to partially treat raw water from our reservoir system and inject it then back into or recharge our ASR system. Currently, you may be aware that we treat the water twice when it goes into the ASR system. It's fully treated drinking water when we put it down. This project will allow us to partially treat that water from our reservoir system, only treat it with filtration, disinfection. It's a cost savings to our customers. We're not paying for that water to be treated twice. So with that, the next steps and schedule on the CIP and CNA, we provided the professional staff a draft of our CIP, CNA at the March 9th meeting. We anticipate receiving additional comments from staff as well as possible discussion or input from the board today. Plan to incorporate those comments into a final draft to provide to the professional staff at our May 4th meeting, and then come back to the board on June 1st for approval of the 5-year CIP, 20-year CNA to be included into the FY23 budget. So with that, I will take any input, questions.
Again, Terry, thank you very much. And after our meeting yesterday morning, no motion is required, but this is certainly the time for board discussion and guidance and direction. Anything at all for Terry? You must have done a great job. And
Thank you.
That was a wonderful job. I do have one question. Is this the time, or is it handled later, where you could just give us a 2-minute update on the reservoir, the new reservoir?
Oh, sure. I could provide an update on it right now. We went through the approval process at the last board meeting to kick off the preliminary design phase for the reservoir. So really what we have started, and we actually started before that utilizing some of the owner's allowance, doing the environmental studies that needed to be on the reservoir. So one highlight I would like to say of the 30 miles worth of wetland delineations that the consultant needed to complete. They will be finished with those delineations next week, I believe, is the last week that they're on site. So that is a huge jump ahead. We're able to do that during the dry season. We have our geotech also out on site doing soil borings, cone penetrometer tests, lots of work. They have finished the first series of borings. They've done approximately 40 borings right now, and they'll be moving on to the next phase into a different area. We've had our first kickoff meeting, so things are moving along swimmingly, and we are working with our general counsel to work through some of the nuances of the mitigation process on those wetlands. So we are on schedule, on budget, and we are hoping to possibly have the reservoir constructed in time to catch the rains of the 2027 season, wet season, so that we can have that thing ready to go in 2028.
Well, that was a great couple of minutes, and it's amazing the amount of work that's going on for the uninitiated. It's just not. I had to be told this that it's just digging a hole and filling it with water. It's a little more complex than
Just a little bit.
And this is just a great job. Thank you, Terry,
Thank you.
very much. Okay, we are on item number 5, which is the owner's owner's agent services for the 5-year CIP. Mr. Knowles is going to help us with that. And Mr. Knowles, I believe that this is your first time speaking with us, coming before us as one of our employees.
It is. It's a
And
pleasure
just
to
a
be doing
word
so.
of warning, I've been here 8 years. These commissioners are reluctant to believe anybody that wears a beard. So you go right ahead.
You're in trouble later. Morning, Commissioners. My name is Mike Knowles. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you for the first time as a member of the authority today. This presentation is for information purposes only on the owner's agent services for the 5-year CIP. It's a relatively short presentation, so please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. Owner's agent would be a consultant firm that would come on board and help augment the authority's staff in order to complete CIP projects. As Terry mentioned, we have over $500 million worth of CIP in our 5-year plan coming up. And while we've got great staff at the authority, it is a lean group, including one construction manager. So from there, many of our member utilities have similar contracts to augment our staff or augment their staff, including engineer of record, owner's agents, or engineering libraries. So our selection process, our RFP was advertised on March 22nd. Today is actually the day questions are due on that RFP. April 22nd, we'll be receiving those proposals, and our selection committee would be meeting on May 6th to shortlist up to 3 firms. On May 16th, we would hear interviews and make our final selection and bring that recommendation to the board in June. I do want to point out that whatever firm is selected for this is precluded from submitting on CIP projects during the duration of the contract. So the scope of services under this contract is vague in nature on purpose because it's meant to handle anything that comes up on our CIP projects that's needed. So I listed just some examples here because they could include work orders for help with land acquisition related to property takes or easements, value engineering, construction management services. So that's just to name a few of those. I'd like to expand on the value engineering. The authority has done several value engineering studies on some of our large capital projects. 3 of them are shown here. 2 of them for pipeline projects resulted in a savings of about $500,000. The cost of those work orders was less than $50,000, so it was a 10-fold return on the investment in those work orders. The value engineering study for Reservoir 2 identified over $8 million worth of potential savings. So the reason I'm showing this is that some of the VE savings could help offset the cost of bringing on an owner's agent. So again, our next step is to bring back our recommendation to the board in June. If that's approved by the board, we'd execute our contract and then issue work assignments as our capital improvement projects come up. I'd like to entertain any questions you might have.
Sure, any questions for Mike? No, Mike, you did a great job. Thank you for helping us.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now on item number 6, Regional Integrated Loop System, Phase 3C Pipeline. And we have Richard Anderson, Tom Wilson, and Doug Manson who are going to help us with this.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson of the authority staff. I want to thank Terry and Mike for doing a great job of setting me up, covering the background of all these projects and the CIP that's about to come up. This is the first project that we want to talk about that we will need action from the board on. We'll be requesting that the board accepts the final route recommendation of the consultant. So again, this is item number 6. It's the final report and recommendations for the feasibility and routing study for the 3C Regional Integrated Loop project. Just as a reminder, this was funded and budgeted through our planning assessment. The total cost was about $600,000. And again, we got $300,000 from the Water Management District in cost offsets for this project. The study was awarded to Wade Trim back in December of 2020, and scheduled completion date is today. So here we are today with the final presentation. Again, Wade Trim will identify and recommend their top-ranked route for the first phase of the project, the 3C project from Clark Road up to the vicinity of Fruitville Road, and then discuss the 3 highest-ranked routes for the 3C extension. Do a quick project overview. Wade Trim will then cover the final route recommendation. We'll cover the schedule and approval. And then Part B, as you noticed in your board book, is a discussion on the interlocal agreement, which we'll turn over to Mr. Manson to handle that when we get to that point. So a quick overview on the project. As you've seen back in February, this is the 3C pipeline. It continues the extension of the Phase 3 project that originates here at the Carlton Water Treatment Plant. Phases 3A and 3B are complete and in service. The 3C portion will pick up again at Clark Road and eventually connect to Manatee County somewhere along the University Parkway corridor. This is a close-up of the project area. As you can see, again, it runs from roughly Clark Road to the south, where the Phase 3B connection is currently located, and makes its way north. We have a proposed pumping station and storage facility in the area of Lorraine and Fruitville. And then eventually the 3C extension will make its way up to University Boulevard and connect to Manatee County somewhere right along the University Boulevard. The original scope of the project, as I mentioned back in February, was to do the route study for the entire length of the pipeline. Since that time, the county, Sarasota County, has identified the need to accelerate their portion of the project. So it was broken into 2 pieces that roughly follow this red line along Fruitville Road. Phase 1 is the portion that we're going to have the recommendation on today, which runs from the Clark Road connection here at 3B up to Blue Lake Road, which is just north of Fruitville there, right along Lorraine Boulevard. The extension part will be done at a future date, and that runs from that Blue Lake extension, again, up to Manatee County. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tom Wilson of Wade Trim, and he's going to cover the route recommendations. Tom?
Good morning, Chairman and board members. Despite my beard, you can believe I am Tom Wilson with Wade Trim, and here to tell a story that I believe has a happy ending. I'll first talk about our alternate route A1, part of the Phase 1. This route starts at a stub that was left out on the Phase 3B pipeline, kind of goes around the National Cemetery. We tried to go up the Florida Power and Light transmission corridor and had a few meetings with them. They rejected our request, so we would be parallel to that corridor, but on some of the Hi-Hat Ranch development property. And at about halfway up, we would, there's a lot of easements associated with that through the forest at Hi-Hat Ranch and some of what's not been developed yet. Eventually, we get into their 500-foot buffer that they have to have required around their proposed development. There's some environmental features in there, not real good, but eventually we do get into a Sarasota County easement and the future Lorraine Road, which is under design, and make our way up. This is our longest route. It did have very good hydraulics because of the connection point to 3B. Our most easements that we looked at and the highest environmental impacts, maybe the only positive is that it was very low in public inconvenience because it really didn't have any parallel working roads. Well, okay, our next route is B1. That one comes off the very end of the Phase 3 pipeline right at Clark Road near Cowpen Slough. It goes across into a proposed easement and then very quickly into the Cowpen Slough kind of maintained right-of-way, if you will. We field recon this route, and this is a very strong section of route for this pipeline. There's only one utility there. There's a 16-inch reclaimed main that Sarasota County has, and quite a wide maintenance road corridor, so just grass restoration. We follow that up to Lorraine Road, and then up through the proposed extension to Lorraine Road up to Fruitville. This is one of our shorter routes. It has the lowest comparable cost. It has some moderate easement acquisition required. There's actually 5 parcels from 3 owners, but 4 of those are golf club communities along the canal, and that land is kind of already encumbered for maintenance of the canal. This is also maybe our best long-range planning option. And then finally, Route C1. This one's a little bit different than we presented back in February to the board. But if there were complications along the slough, we wanted to look at this route. This one starts off with just over a mile in state road right-of-way of Clark Road. A parallel easement was not really available there. And then it uses Lorraine Road all the way up. The beauty, if you will, of this is it had absolutely zero property acquisition required. The entire route is in either right-of-way or easements, or existing easements. Did have a higher utility congestion and perhaps the highest public inconvenience. The biggest drawback is really having all that pipe in the state road right-of-way, which is subject to future relocation should DOT ask that question. So part of our route selection process, we look at criteria to evaluate for these. And I just want to run through those real quick. Constructability. Each of these criteria has a weighting factor that we use. Another criteria was public impacts, of course, safety, operation and maintenance considerations, that's mostly future, consistency with long-range planning, environmental and permitting complexities, land requirements, and impacts to cultural resources, rounded out. These were collaboratively developed with the authority and your consultant for the other pipeline that you're going to hear about today. So when we ranked all of these routes, it did turn out that Route B1 was our highest ranked route at 3.95. The next highest one was C1 at 3.7. So we would like to recommend that the authority proceed with Route B1. Again, it was our highest ranked alternative, our lowest comparable cost. It has moderate easement acquisition required, and we believe it has the best long-range planning. So it is recommended that the authority proceed with the Phase 1 facilities that, of course, include Route B1. about a little over 48,000 feet of 42-inch transmission main. But that would include the pumping station, at least 5 million gallons of ground storage. The site will have 10 million ultimate, and associated site facilities, generators, chemical injection, driveway parking, et cetera, site utilities. I'll talk a little bit about phase 2. From the end of phase 1, and it could be either near Fruitville Road and Lorraine or Blue Lake Road and Lorraine. We're looking at the most conservative location right now, which would be Blue Lake in case phase 1 needs that funding. We have 3 routes here. One continues up Lorraine Road to University Parkway. That's actually not a real bad part of University Parkway. It's not very developed, a lot of grass space available. And then Route B2 goes across Blue Lake. It could be in Blue Lake Road. It could also be, the county has an easement in there. Either one of them would work for us there. And then it goes up Lakewood Ranch Boulevard to University Parkway. I should point out that there's an interconnection between Sarasota County and Manatee County at Lakewood Ranch Boulevard and University. There's another one at Lorraine Road and University, and maybe the biggest one is at Lockwood Ridge Road on University. So those first 2 routes, the first route hits 2 of those interconnects. The second one only hits 1, but it's a good one for sharing a lot of water back and forth. And then our final route was C2, which is really the intention of our original scope, was to get water all the way over to University Pump Station. So we did include that. It didn't have a very high benefit cost ratio, so it's kind of our lowest rated, I will call it. So Route A2 is very simple, hits 2 interconnects like I mentioned. There's a bit of a water quality challenge. We want to be able, in an emergency condition, to share a lot of water back and forth between Manatee County and the authority, so we need a pretty good sized pipeline to do that. 36-inch, about 25 MGD we should be able to share. But today, Manatee County doesn't project a normal need or a need for normal water supply. So now we have a big pipe and no flow. Can't do that. So we've got to have some flow in there. There's a couple of ways we could do that. We could deliver some water to Sarasota County right up at University, or we could even deliver some water to Manatee County and have them give it back to Sarasota County. There's a few options there, but we have to get some flow in that pipe so that it stays fresh. Route B2 avoids University Parkway. It still delivers emergency flow to the Lakewood Ranch Interconnect, which is a very hydraulically attractive spot for the county, Manatee County. I mentioned the water quality challenge, but it doesn't directly deliver water to the University Pump Station, where Manatee County is expected, well, the agreement for Manatee County to provide water to Sarasota County at the University Pump Station is going to expire in 2025 unless it's renewed. And then C2, I mentioned, it does avoid the Parkway and it does get all the way over to Lockwood Ridge, but it is the longest and highest comparable cost there. So I talked a little bit about the water quality challenge, and we need between 2 and 3 MGD, but really we need about 3 MGD to be flowing through this pipe in order to keep it fresh so it'll be ready for an emergency condition should we need it. So again, the phase 1, B1 route, we have a comparable cost estimate of about just under $50 million. That's a little bit lower than you saw back in February. I think we were up around 56 back then. So, and this cost does include all of the facilities, including the pump station and acquisition of that site. Richard?
Thank Thank you, Tom. Don't go too far in case they have questions. So. I'm going to cover real quickly the schedule, and then we have a motion for your consideration. This is the same schedule that we presented back in February. Here we are right here today. We're presenting the final recommendation for the route study, and hopefully with board approval, we will move into the next phase of the design build process, which will be to advertise and select a design build team to start this construction and design of this project. We hope to get that accomplished by the October board meeting. That's a lofty goal, but we think we can make that target. Once we get there, we will start construction and design immediately through a progressive design build process with the goal of having the pipeline in service for the county by the spring of 2025. Now, in order to accomplish all that, we also need an interlocal agreement, which I mentioned before. Mr. Manson's going to cover that in just a second. But before he does, we have a motion to consider. This is a motion to accept the B1 route of the feasibility and routing study. It also includes a resolution of necessity to help us begin the process of land acquisition, surveying, and so on and so forth. And Doug can expand on this portion of it if he would like to as well. But
if they have any questions, we can. It's just it's a way to make sure, especially with bi-monthly meetings, that we have the authority and authorization for you to be able to go forward, and if necessary, even to begin condemnation proceedings.
Okay.
Happy to entertain any questions first before we.
I think we need to start before we get into a motion with any questions from any of the board members. Pretty extensive. Tom, you did a great job, beard or not, just a great job. Thank you. Explaining everything. So if there's no questions, and we're taking just the first motion in your package, the chair will entertain a motion for that. Elton, Commissioner Langford?
Yes, sir. Do you want me to read the motion in, or can you just take a motion?
I think it's best
Recommended?
you read it in, right?
Okay.
Would you prefer we read it in? Yes, he's saying
Okay.
yes.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
I know.
motion to approve the recommended pipeline route B1 for Phase 1 of the project as identified in the feasibility and routing study for the regional integrated loop Phase 3 pipeline, and to approve the resolution number 2022-03. You want the resolution too?
No,
or is
I
that
think
good
it's
enough?
up on the board now. Is that enough, Doug? Yeah, you're fine.
Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Langford, a second by Commissioner Truex. Any discussion on that?
Just a
Yes, sir.
comment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, Richard, staff, Tom, you guys going through this. It's a very intricate, detailed change or operation that we're going to go through. But actually, I found it easily understood. You guys made it very, very simple to follow. Your presentation even clarified what little fog I might have had. So I just want to say thank you very much. Well done.
Great. Thank you.
I would just add before we call for the vote that it sure looks easy when we get a quick 10-minute, 15-minute discussion on this, but these territories are getting more and more difficult. We've talked about that in the past, to get the rights of way, to find a place to put the pipe, to maintain the hydraulics, to do the least impact to the citizens that live there, and to do it in as best we can an economical manner. So it's much appreciated. This board really understands the difficulty. We have a couple of them we'll discuss today to get these pipelines through. So with that, we're on the first motion for item number 6 on the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That moves forward, Richard, 4-0.
Thank you very much.
And I think
Now I'll
it's
turn it over to Mr. Manson for the interlocal agreement.
Yeah, this is the part that always fascinates all of you. I get to discuss a 28-page interlocal agreement, paragraph by paragraph. No, I always threaten, but we never do that. So this is the standard interlocal that we provided to contract with our member governments and others, our customers, to build pipelines. You know, if you recall, under a master water supply contract, pipelines have to be contracted for separately. And what's interesting about the interlocal and the way we've done it is you're in a process of distributing hydraulic capacity. The authority owns the pipeline, owns the actual pipe in the ground. But what we do is we split the, if you will, the ownership of the hydraulic capacity of that pipeline based on a percentage number that's given in each of the agreements. And we've been doing this for years. It's a method we use. The only thing that's new in this contract, and then you're going to see this also in the Charlotte in a slightly different format, is this time we came up with something I'll call a cost recovery method. We haven't done it before, so we were trying something new, and members expressed interest in that. So then we responded and came up with a methodology for Sarasota, and then Charlotte developed one that's slightly that's different. But in this one, the idea is, you know, the Southwest Florida Water Management District funds half of this pipeline. That's what we're hoping for. So we get 50%. But the member government pays the other 50%. And obviously, you saw the cost of the pipeline, it's kind of substantial. Well, just like you with your utilities, if a developer pays to extend a sewer line, if other people come in later and want to tap into that line, he gets paid back some cost recovery. So we've kind of built that in there so that if in the future someone wants to tap into this particular line that you just heard discussed, could be a member government, could be customer, could be another entity, then they will have to pay, and there's a process laid out in the agreement, to pay back some of that money if the member government's selling its hydraulic capacity to that member government. And whether or not the hydraulic capacity is sold to the member or if the authority sells it, there'll be a reduction, assuming it's within the payback period of the bond, in their pro rata amount that they pay off the pipeline with. So in effect, you know, there won't be a free ride, if you will. You know, new people coming in have to make up the money. And so this is one methodology used here, and in the next pipeline agreement, I'll talk about another one. Other than that, it's the standard same provisions you've done in the past.
Okay, and Doug, I'll start with a question. I'll assume, and I'll ask the same question when we get to number 7. Sarasota County utility folks and administration have accepted this document?
That's correct. They've signed it. Good point. Yes, it's already been executed by Sarasota, and obviously the reason why we came to you today and why we're going to ask the chair to stay afterwards to sign it if you approve it is we need to submit it into the request for funding to the Southwest Florida Water Management District tomorrow.
Perfect. Any other questions on this? Okay, we'll need, Chair will entertain a motion. It's on the screen. Commissioner Truitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the interlocal agreement for regional integrated loop system Phase 3C interconnect between the Peace River Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority and Sarasota County.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Truitt, second by Commissioner Langford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That moves forward with an approval 4-0. So thank you all for that. And now we have, we're on item number 7, the Phase 2B, 2C Regional Interconnect. It is also a two-parter. We have Ford Ritz, Doug Ekman, and again, Doug Manson.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Ford Ritz of your staff. This is regular item 7 for the Phase 2B, 2C pipeline. There's 2 motions that are associated with this item, but no budget action. Just some background, Kilmehorn was awarded the project back in December of 2020 for a total cost of just under $400,000, of which 50% has been co-funded by the district. At our last board meeting, Kilmehorn presented 3 feasible routes for each pipeline and discussed the basis of the determination of the route selections for each pipeline. Going forward, after today, the project will be separated into 2 separate projects, the Phase 2B, and then in the future, the Phase 2C, which kind of coincides with what Terry was talking about with the CIP and the CNA. So today, Kilmehorn will present the recommended route for the Phase 2B interconnect. So similar to Richard's today, we'll discuss the project overview, the feasibility study findings, results. Doug Ekman from Kimley Horn will discuss this, the next step and schedule, and then the first motion for the recommended route. Then we'll turn it over to Doug Manson to cover the interlocal agreement with Charlotte County for the Phase 2B project. So you're probably pretty familiar with this regional vision map. Takeaway here is the Phase 2B, if I get the mouse to work. Well, the Phase 2B begins at the terminus of the regional system, moves south, and, well, moves south, it moves west, and then turns south and crosses the Myakka River down to the Charlotte County Gulf Cove Booster Pump Station. And then out in the future, Phase 2C will pick up at that facility and go to the west and sweep up to the Carlton Water Treatment Plant. And the Carlton's important in the region because it's a central hub to move water between the Peace River facility and eventually up to the Manatee County system, which Richard was just talking about when Phase 3C gets completed. So when the Phase 2B2C interconnect is finally completed in the future, it'll provide a southern loop up to the Carlton, and this will complement and back up our existing northern loop to the Carlton, and it'll provide water to Phase 2B will provide water to Charlotte County and West Charlotte County, and in the future to Sarasota County. The 2C will provide water to Sarasota County, and then also push water up to the Manatee system. So overall, this project, when completed, will improve regional resiliency and reliability and interconnectivity. So at the February board meeting, the Phase 2B was recommended to proceed with preliminary engineering, and it was discussed that the Phase 2C was pushed out. And now, Doug.
Thank you, Board. Doug Ekman, and good morning, Chairman Mayo and Commissioners. Doug Ekman with Kimley Horn, and that's how it works. So at the last board meeting, we presented our routes that were shortlisted for both Phase 2B and 2C after our analysis of a much larger number of possibilities. And consistent with what Terry said and what Ford said, we are recommending to proceed with the preliminary engineering on Phase 2B. We suggest deferral of the engineering on Phase 2C to be consistent with the planning or demand projections for Sarasota County and long-range planning for emergency interconnects through the Phase 3 system to Manatee County. So we shortlisted 3 alternatives for Phase 2B. 2B1, which follows Hillsborough and Chancellor, and then south on Campbell, across the Myakka River, terminating at the Charlotte County Gulf Cove Booster Pumping Station. And Phase 2.2 was an alternative that used Veterans Parkway. And then point 3 was an alternative similar to 2B.2, but utilizing Kenilworth, which is a smaller side street. It seemed like it might be easier. We recommending our alternative 2B.1. It's the shortest. It has the least number of easements. It scored the highest in our non-direct cost factors, which means it's the least impact on the public and the environment. It has a somewhat higher projected cost, and you might ask why, because it's the shortest, but because Hillsborough is pretty developed, we have more underground utility conflicts that have to be resolved during design and construction, which have a cost. However, we think the benefits of our recommended 2B.1 alignment outweigh the somewhat additional cost. The strategic placement. The termination at the Gulf Cove Booster Pumping and Storage Facility, which is an ideal place to originate in the future a Phase 2C pipeline. It also allows us to keep water flowing through this pipeline by providing a constant supply to Charlotte County, resolving any water quality issues. There's maximum opportunities for interconnects because we're on the county line between Charlotte County and Sarasota County. And we also have identified, in addition to the Gulf Cove Booster Pumping and Storage Facility, another key interconnect point that serves the high-growth areas of Charlotte County. There's a possibility of cost sharing because Charlotte County has already planned a 16-inch water distribution main in that same corridor. And conceivably, both the water transmission main, the larger water transmission main, and the water distribution main could be installed in the same trench, which would have obvious cost savings, which is not reflected in our cost projection for the current cost projection for the Phase 2B.1 pipeline. It's the highest ranked in terms of the impacts, or in other words, has the least impacts. And it's the shortest route, which will mean it'll be probably the shortest time duration to construct it. And, as I mentioned, because almost all of it's in public right-of-way or in publicly owned lands, the fewest easements or property acquisition requirements. So if there's not any immediate questions for me, I will turn this presentation back over to Mr. Ritz. Thank you.
Any questions? I don't see any, Doug. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Next steps and schedule for the Phase 2B project. So based on the a board approval of the interlocal agreement with Charlotte County that's coming up, the authority will move forward with the consultant selection process for the Phase 2B. And this will be followed, so the Phase 2B will start up in fiscal year 2023 or October 2022. And this will be followed by final design and construction, which we plan to deliver by alternate delivery, progressive design build, or construction manager at risk to accelerate the schedule to meet Charlotte County's needs. So the target is to complete construction of the Phase 2B by the third quarter of 2026. And then the 2C bullet there, those dates, as already has been discussed by Terry, they reflect our CIP, CNA planning schedule. So if need arose, or if need arises, we could start Phase 2C earlier than 2029 if we get customer requests. But for planning purposes right now, this is the schedule. So next up is the motion for the Phase 2B interconnect recommended route. And we can address this, take care of this one now, and then we'll move on to the interlocal agreement for the next one.
Okay, we haven't had any questions, so Chair will entertain a motion. Please read it into the record. You want to take this one? I see reaching, or somebody, who else was? Okay, Commissioner Truex.
I'll move approval, or move to approve the recommended route for integrated loop system Phase 2B interconnect from the terminus of the regional system at Cirrus Boulevard to the Charlotte County Gulf Cove Water Booster Pump Station.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Truex, a second by Commissioner Langford. Any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll call a question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That moves forward 4-0 with approval. And again, just a comment before we give it over to Doug. It all looks easy when we talk about it here for 15, 20 minutes, but it's hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work that goes into this. And someday we are going to give these folks a pipeline through a desert environment that we have down here with no houses to make it a lot easier on them. Doug, take us to the second
I
part,
don't think we
please.
have those areas.
Go right ahead, Doug.
So this interlocal agreement is very similar to the Sarasota interlocal agreement, except for the provision we talked about on cost recovery. Under what I will call a thorough discussion at the Charlotte County Board meeting, there was a different idea proposed, and that idea is for a full cost recovery based on what the project would cost at the time of recovery. So to clarify that, say you've got a project's been in the ground 10 years, Charlotte paid for their 50% of it, so that's the full member benefit. They have 50% of the hydraulic capacity. Somebody comes in 10 years later, they want to interconnect and they want to use 10% of it. So the idea would be, okay, we're going to go in and use 10%, and under the Sarasota scenario, they would get the cost recovery for what they had spent. Under this scenario, we're going to use a construction inflation index so that they'll then take the amount of money, the total amount, which included land acquisition cost and the project cost to build it. And then we're going to place the escalator on that and take it 10 years forward and say, okay, that's what the cost would be if you had to build this pipeline for yourself to get this amount. So you're going to pay 10% of that cost, and 100% of that recovery goes back to Charlotte, whether we sell the hydraulic capacity or they sell it. And I buried the lead last time. Make sure that the commission has already signed this contract, and we're ready to go. And so with your approval, we'll be submitting it tomorrow in the application to SwiftMud for funding.
Any questions? Commissioner Truex.
I move to approve interlocal agreement for regional integrated loop system Phase 2B interconnect between the Peace River Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority and Charlotte County.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Truex, seconded by Commissioner Langford. Any comments, discussion? Hearing none.
I just
Anything?
very briefly
Yep,
want to thank
absolutely.
Doug and Mike for their indulgence and their ability to dig in with us during that meeting. We tend to get in the weeds sometimes, and we were getting down there to the very small ones. But we appreciate your time and your effort.
Okay, with that, we'll call the question. We're on item number 7, Part B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That moves forward with a 4-0 approval. Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank Jeanette Dalton and Jean, who worked with us during the intermission, or not intermission, actually, you were still down on the floor, where we went off and we were given 2 hours to rewrite the contract, and it was a joint effort, to come up with the wording with utility staff and their legal staff, and then be able to come back down to do it. So we really appreciate the spirit of cooperation we have at Charlotte and the legal staff working with us.
Okay, before I turn it over to Mike Coates for the budget items 1 and 2, again, we can't stress enough to this board that the sequential, continuous, exacting nature of moving us forward for another 20 years of great water, it just can't be ignored. These meetings don't really take in. I try to highlight it, commissioners try to highlight it, the extreme complexity of all of this and the amount of money being spent and the time and effort that goes into it by the staff. But we're now going to have Mike tell us the few dollars that he needs for this.
This is the Alex moment.
Yes.
All right, it's up. Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. This is the tentative budget presentation for fiscal 2023. Our interlocal agreement with all of you requires that we develop and approve a tentative budget each year by May 15th. And so this is that tentative budget that I'll present. We'll be requesting board action on the tentative budget, and then we'll follow that with a request, which is item number 2 in this, to approve the resolution establishing the preliminary rates, fees, and charges. So this is really a two-part item. So as rapid growth in our region continues, we have the vision and mission statement of the authority shown here, and that becomes even more imperative when you see what's going on in our region. Making sure that we have an adequate water supply and the ability to deliver that water supply to where it's needed is going to require that we develop new water supplies, and Terry talked about that. It's also going to require that we extend the regional system, and the last 2 items talked about that. The proposed 2023 budget allows us to meet today's water supply needs, and it meets 2023 water supply needs, but also moves us from the planning stage into the design and the construction phase on these projects, on these regional projects. So it's an important step that we're taking today. The development of our annual budget is guided by a number of documents, the interlocal agreement, our water supply contract. We have utility revenue bonds that we have to comply with in the budget. The board budget policies for reserves are also part of the development of the budget. The capital improvement program that Terry talked about is in the budget. And the strategic plan, of course, provides a roadmap that we include in the budget that makes sure that we're moving in the direction that you want us to move. So in addition to developing a budget that's consistent with all of those documents, other obligations and initiatives need to be considered as well. We have to make sure that we can meet our contractual need, 34.7 million gallons a day. Customers this year for 2023 requested about 32 million gallons a day of delivery from the authority, and the budget deals with that. We make every effort to run an efficient and cost-effective operation. And that means investing every year in the repair and maintenance and the renewal and replacement projects that keep your facility running at top condition. And we included, of course, that in the 2023 budget. So here's the schedule that we've got for the formal adoption of the budget. We talked at the last board meeting in February about some of the budget issues, and we'll get in a little more detail with those today. At this meeting, we hope to adopt the tentative budget. Terry talked to you about the capital improvements plan that was sent out to all of our customers and talked about at the March meeting. The budget, the draft tentative budget, was also sent out and discussed at that meeting. And so, that leads up to today. And then on August 3rd, we expect a board meeting and a public hearing to approve the final budget. So between today and August 3rd, if there are any changes that need to be made, we've got 2 professional staff meetings and another board meeting to deal with those. All right, now I did something wrong. It's not advancing. There we go. The authority is set up as an enterprise fund. All of our operating funds come from water sales, assessments to our 5 customers, grants, and financing. We don't get any tax money directly so we don't levy any taxes. And the enterprise fund is split into two functional groups. You can see here, administration and facilities. The administrative costs cover the Lakewood Ranch office. They cover executive, administration, HR, those salaries and office expenses. And the facilities group includes everything else: water production, engineering, construction, and water resources. So we look at the breakout of the administrative and facilities costs for fiscal 2022 and fiscal 2023. There we go. 2022 and 2023. Shows that the administrative costs are up a little bit. But the bigger thing you see here is that the administrative costs represent about 1% of our total budget. The other 99% of the budget is the facilities costs. The table also shows that the budget for 2023 is up $23 million from last year, and we'll get into that in more detail in a minute, but nearly all of that $23 million is the capital improvement program. It's the CIP. That's the thing that goes up and down in our budget every year that really changes significantly. The Master Water Supply Contract allocates 34.7 million gallons a day of capacity from the Peace River facility to our customers. And the allocation is shown here. What you see is 90% of that capacity is allocated to Charlotte County and Sarasota County. DeSoto County and City of Northport have the other 10%. Now, why is that important in the budgetary part of this? It's because those allocations are used on a pro rata basis to determine each customer's share of the fixed operating costs, operating and maintenance costs, that are billed as part of the base rate cost of water that's in the budget. The authority's water rate has a two-part component. You can see a base rate charge and a water use charge. The base rate charge covers fixed costs like debt service and the pro rata share of capacity in the Peace River facility for each participating customer. The water use charge reflects the cost of power, chemicals, and sludge disposal. So the water use charge only reflects what it cost us to actually produce that amount of water. That charge is levied based on how much water we deliver to each customer. The base charge is levied each month, whether the customer takes their allocation or not. So that's a fixed charge to the customers. What I want to do is go through, and we'll talk about the revenue side first, and then the expenses side next. And this is the revenue side. A comparison of the 2022 and 2023 budgets. You can see that in the 2023 budget, water sales revenue is up about $3.7 million from 2022. The CIP fund includes revenue to fund the capital improvements projects. That includes, in 2023, borrowing to support two of the pipeline projects. That is the Phase 2B and the Phase 3C, Phase 1 projects. We've got about $7 million in grants. 2.5 of that is from the state, and about $5 million is from SwiftMud. The other facility shown on here, or the other cost, is about the same as last year. Reserve fund is up about $500,000 in 2023. This includes transfers from the R&R reserve account of about $4 million and transfers from rate stabilization of $1 million, which is intended to help keep the rates as low as we can keep them reasonably in 2023. And carry forward is just that. It includes debt service coverage funds collected in 2022 that are going to be returned in 2023, and an estimated $4 million in funds carried forward from 2022, so funds that weren't used in 2022 but that were collected. It's doing it again. There we go. This graph shows the base rate charge proposed for 2023 and the base rate for the prior 4 years that was in the budget. Now remember, the base rate charge covers debt service and it covers fixed operating and maintenance costs. So between 2019 and 2021, we saw the base rate charge go up about 3% a year. In 2022, it went up about 5%. And this year, for 2023, the base rate charge is about 6.5% higher than it was in 2022. As we break that out, we see the individual charges by individual charges for each of our customers. And as you can see, Charlotte and Sarasota counties, having 90% of the capacity in the Peace River facility, are paying 90% of the base rate charge. That 2023 base rate charge increase of about $1.8 million, or 6.5%, is dominated by an increase in funding for the CIP, an increase to the utility reserve fund, which we have to make to comply with the board's policy on utility reserve, and increased personnel costs. The use rate charge is proposed to go up from 82 cents a thousand to 89 cents a thousand gallons in 2023. And I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail here in the next slides. Here's a similar graphic to the one I just showed for the base rate, and this is for the use rate. It shows the use rate charge proposed in the budget in 2023, and then for the prior 4 years. Prior 4 years, we saw use rates go up 3 to 4% a year. The proposed increase in 2023 is 7 cents, or about 8.5%. And that would translate into about 28 cents a month increase for the average 4,000-gallon residential user. So the increase in 2023 is due in large part to power and chemical cost increase. Just to give you an idea, the chemical cost increase is 33% more than the budget last year. So and the actual increase in chemicals was much more than that. It just so happens that in the budget in 2022, we got some extra chemical costs that were included in the budget. So that actually took up part of the slack. But we've seen a huge increase in chemical costs. I think all of the utilities in this area have seen the same thing. So how did we get to the 7 cents a thousand increase in 2023, considering there's a large increase in power and chemical cost overall? We had our rate consultants run the rate model for us, and they plugged in the new chemical cost, the new power cost, and what the rate model actually showed, I pulled it out down here, it showed a 17-cent increase for 2023. And then small increases for 2024 and 2025. So what we've proposed to do is take this total increase from 2022 to 2025 and split it into 3 parts. This year, 2023, would go up 7 cents. In 2024, we'd have a programmed increase of 8 cents, and in 2025, a programmed increase of another 8 cents a thousand gallons, just to try and blunt the impact of the increased costs that we're seeing. So that is, of course, in the budget, and that's what we're proposing. Another source of revenue, of course, is member fees. Member fees support the Administrative Cost Center for the authority. That's the Lakewood Ranch office. They've increased slightly from 2022. Member fees are collected based on board policy, and the board policy is identified down here. Half of that is divided equally among the 4 members. The other half is a pro rata share of the total 4-county population for each of the 4 members. And so you can see the totals over here. So the member fee is up about $23,000 from last year. Management and planning assessment. This is the last of the revenue items that I'll talk about here. This assessment covers planning projects like the 2020 Regional Water Supply Master Plan. It includes the feasibility studies that we did for the pipelines that we just talked about. And in past budgets, the management and planning assessment has jumped up and down a lot based on what we're doing each year. You can see last year it was $625,000. The year before that it was $625,000. The year before that it was substantially lower. And so we wanted to impart some stability into this. So we went through and identified all of the projects, the planning projects we expect to do in the next 3 years, and we rolled those up, and we're proposing a levelized assessment of $475,000 for each of the next 3 years to cover those projects, just to allow for not quite as much variability in that. And of course, that's $150,000 lower than it is in the 2022 budget. Now, the board policy on this is the assessment is split between all 5 customers based on their pro rata share of the 4-county population. Now, let's talk about the expenditures side. Similar to the revenue comparison, the graphic shows 2022 versus proposed 2023. Operation and maintenance cost here is, of course, the cost of running the facilities, personnel, repairs, maintenance, power, chemicals. That's up $2.7 million from last year. Almost all of that is chemical cost increase. Debt service, shown here, is $10.4 million, same as last year. Projects includes CIP projects, R&R projects, maintenance and planning projects. This is up significantly from last year due to the CIP projects. County payments, same as last year. Disbursements, about $1.2 million lower than last year. This includes the return of debt service coverage funds to our customers, and it's lower than in 2022 because in 2022 we also returned to the customers savings from the refinancing of the bonds. So those aren't in there this year. And then the other category increased about $1.5 million this year. This includes contributions to the R&R reserve, various transfers, and that $1.5 million increase reflects increases in transfers to the CIP and the utility reserve. So as we get a little bit deeper into the expense part of this, we'll look at the O&M expenses. Power and chemical costs are up significantly. Like I said, chemicals 33% over last year. Staff costs are up 12% over last year. And this includes 2 new personnel at the authority. You can see a construction inspector and environmental specialist. We have a small staff, and so 2 new personnel represents a 3% increase in our total staffing. So it does have an effect on the staffing budget. And we're also proposing a 7% increase in compensation for our employees. 4% of that would be the cost of living. Frankly, I don't think that covers the cost of living increase this year or next year, but that's what I'm hoping we can do, and a 3% merit increase. The rest of the O&M expenses, such as repairs and maintenance, professional services, machinery and equipment, all of those other categories, when you roll them all together, they're pretty much the same as they were last year. In other rate-related expenditures in the budget, the budgeted R&R expenditures for 2023 are the same as they were in 2024. That was recommended by a study that we had on how much we should be spending for R&R. Because of the increase in the O&M budget, mostly associated with chemical costs, we have to have a corresponding increase in the utility reserve fund. And that would be to meet board policy. The utility reserve fund requires us keeping 180 days of O&M expenses in that utility reserve. That means we would need another $1.2 million in that fund in 2023 to meet the policy. And that would be apportioned on a pro rata share of the capacity that each customer has in our Peace River facilities. So similar to what we did for the water use rate, we're proposing to split that out over 3 years and have a programmed addition of $400,000 each year instead of the $1.2 million hit in 2023. There's also a contribution to the CIP for the Peace River facility the Reservoir Number 3 project. That's about $425,000 more than last year. That also is programmed on a pro rata share of our customers' capacity in the Peace River facility. And in 2023, there's a $1.2 million increase for customer contributions to pay revolving debt from our $5 million loan from PNC, or our $5 million line of credit from PNC. So we would essentially pay off a couple of projects and begin paying down the filter coverage project. For the CIP, we've projected $24.3 million in projects. That's split between water transmission and water supply projects, shown up here, and system-wide benefit projects, shown down here. What we see for the water supply and water transmission projects include about $22.8 million in projects, and about $7 million of that funding is coming from SWIFT-MUD grants and state grants. About $14.3 million would be required for new borrowing. And what we're looking at for new borrowing is to go out and either get a bank loan or go to the Florida Local Government Finance Program sometime in early calendar year 2023 to help fund the Phase 3C project and the Phase 2B project. The loan payments for that wouldn't hit until after fiscal 2023, so they're not showing up in the budget as an increase, but 2024, 2025, we'll have to start making loan payments on those. Of course, we're going to be talking to our new financial advisor about just how to structure that, so we'll look for obviously the most favorable structure we can. Two system-wide benefit projects shown down here, partially treated surface water project at $500,000. All of that money is coming from the DEP. So we don't want to have to, actually we've got another $500,000. We got $1 million from the DEP for that project. And we've got $1 million for the Water Resources and Construction Building that Terry showed in the CIP. And that would come from that line of credit we have from PNC. How do I back up? There we go. And finally, the budget includes disbursements of about $1.5 million in debt service coverage funds collected from the customers in 2022. We collect these funds each year from the customers to make our debt service coverage ratios, and then we return those funds every year, and then we collect them again. So it's kind of a round robin of accounting mystery. But So as we roll all of this up, we see the O&M costs increasing gradually through time. The non-O&M costs, those include debt service, those include transfers to the CIP and reserves. Those are generally increasing, but there's a lot of variability in that for debt payment changes, so debt coverage. But of course, the prime mover, the big move here is the CIP. Big change in the CIP this year, $23 million more than last year. And as we get into 2024, you'll see that go up pretty substantially. So with that, Mr. Chair, board members, I'll entertain any questions on the budget, and then I have a motion.
Okay, first of all, any questions or discussion? I'll just be real brief. For most of the last 8 years, I've been the second signature on all the checks, and sometimes has to bring them to me, but I'm usually there. I watched, and all of us up here have watched our staff really struggle with the chemical increases and the power bills. It is something that we can't really impact no matter how much we try to put that out. And for those out there who still say to me, the water's free, why do you have to charge for it at all? I would tell them to look at what we're paying in chemicals. And the one that was most dramatic that we remark on is the FP&L bill for the last period. It was just a couple of $100 short of $175,000 for the 1 month period. And we already know, based on our projected usage for the next period, we will probably hit another benchmark of $200,000 for 1 month of FP&L bills. So this is a constant struggle. Our staff works extremely hard in trying to keep these expenses down, and they need to be commended for that. With that, we are on item 1 of the budget motion, and I think we'll put it back up on the board, or we have it in our packet. Commissioner Langford.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $76,415,527.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Langford, second by Commissioner Cruz. Any further discussion? Commissioner Truex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, we look at this significant increase in budget, but out of the significant increase, 18.6 million of it's in capital and variance from last year. So it really, I think what we're facing in this economy, I think you've done very well trying to keep the numbers tight. I really do. I own a construction company, and we've seen a 23% increase in construction costs. So when I see a budget going up, removing the capital variance from last year, the increase really isn't that much. And when it comes to trying to reward employees, I commend you for trying to do the best you can here. We're seeing a major problem around the region for people making a living that we used to think was sustainable here. They can't afford to live in housing. People are getting kicked out of their houses that they rent because the owners are taking major profits. I don't blame them, but they're selling off rental properties in droves, and now many, many people don't have places to live. So I commend the staff and their efforts in trying to keep this a reasonable increase. We do have a lot of capital improvements that have to take place. And again, I think you guys are doing one heck of a job for all of our counties and our members and customers.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That moves forward with a 4-0 approval. Mike, you're on item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is item number 2 of the tentative budget. It's a resolution 2022-04 formalizes the board adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal 2023 and establishes its intent to set rates and fees and charges based on the tentative budget. A board meeting and public hearing is scheduled for August 3rd, 2022, where the board will adopt the final schedule of rates, fees, and charges. And the staff recommendation then is shown here.
Okay, I don't think there's any questions on that, so a motion, Commissioner Langford.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve Resolution 2022-04, resolution setting forth preliminary schedules of rates, fees, and charges for fiscal year 2023.
Motion by Commissioner Langford, second by Commissioner Cruz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye, and that moves forward with a 4-0 approval. We now have the 4-hour General Counsel's report.
All I'm going to do is remind the legal colleagues that I have at the counties and at Northport that we will be having a discussion about the amendment to the master water supply contract, the update that we're doing at the next meeting, which is going to be the professional staff meeting on May 4th, 2022. We've incorporated the comments that we got from the professional staff meeting in January and send out another draft. And I'll be following that up with an email to each one of the individual legal counsels to invite them to attend and try to get input. We'd like to be able to obviously get this updated amendment to it back to you in the June board meeting if possible. We'll see how much more discussion we have at this professional staff meeting. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Mike, and the Executive Director's report.
Just a couple of things, Mr. Chair. There it is. Just a couple of things, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see about the board's consensus on having a workshop at the June board meeting. I think there are a couple of items that we would really kind of better cover in a workshop. One of them is the master water supply contract cleanup that Doug is talking about, and get into that in a little bit more detail. And the other is what Terry Holcomb laid out in the master water supply contract, and the changes that we'll need to make to some of those schedules, what that does to each of the customers' allocations in the Peace River facility. We could probably talk about, and we should talk about, project financing for those items. And so if there's interest, it would probably be helpful to have a workshop associated with the June board meeting to discuss those items.
Is there anyone that doesn't want to see that, so we have a consensus on a workshop? I think you have that, Mike.
Okay, good. Two other items. We have two new employees, and you met Mike Knowles, who you didn't trust because he has a beard.
Guy with the beard.
He'll be shaving that off. He'll be shaving that off this afternoon. But Mike joined the authority in January as our engineering project senior manager. So he'll be in charge of the engineering and construction management on those CIP projects that Terry was talking about. Mike is a licensed professional engineer in Florida. He got his bachelor's degree in water resources engineering at USF and his master's in environmental engineering at the University of Florida. He's got 20 years of experience in the water, wastewater, and reclaimed water engineering fields. We stole him from a local consulting company, and he's also actively engaged in a number of professional organizations locally here. He and his family live in Sarasota County. And then we also have Jim Guida. Jim and I have known each other for about, close to 40 years. But Jim is a graduate of USF. He's a professional geologist in Florida. He's our new Director of Planning and Water Resources. So he'll be taking care of the water supply system planning, permitting, ASR reservoir and reservoir management, land management, environmental and hydrologic monitoring programs. He has a great deal of experience in water use and environmental resource permitting, which we are going to need here with the reservoir project and with the ASR project. He was with SwiftMud for 21 years, 11 years of that. He was a director of the Sarasota service offices. And when he left SwiftMud, he started his own company with some partners. And then most recently, they have sold their company, and we lured him over to our side. He started in mid-March, and he and his family live in Lakewood Ranch. So you'll see their faces at all of these meetings from now on. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, you're welcome to call them. All right?
What's their phone number?
Yeah, I'll get it for you.
Also, just to endorse Mr. Guida, I had the opportunity to cross-examine him in 1996 in a water and he did very well, so I'm glad he's on our side. And he also, remember, was the one that was advocating for the 50-year water use permit with us and has
That's
assisted
right.
us for years as a private consultant and very familiar with everything the authority does. So it's good to have both Mike and Jim.
Perfect. Anything else, Mike?
No, thank you.
All right, the routine status reports are in your packet. I have no cards for any public comment. Anyone here from the public that wishes to speak? With that said, we are meeting on June 1st, 2022 at 9:30 with our friends at Charlotte County Administration Center. And if there's no other business, we are adjourned.